This boy who looks like a little girl is truly amazing. In this world where magic reigns supreme, the nobility of one's bloodline determines the strength of their magical power. For instance, a newborn royal baby can casually unleash powerful spells, while in his previous life, Lloyd was a commoner whose fireball, even with all his strength, was pathetically weak. In contrast, a noble's casual spell would be at the peak of his capabilities. Consequently, Lloyd was burned alive. Despite this, he didn't despair. Instead, he was captivated by the beauty of noble magic. Lloyd was born with an obsessive fascination with magic to a pathological degree. Before dying, he wished to learn more magic, and as fate would have it, he was reincarnated as a royal noble. Seeing the maids around him, he, still confused about his situation, thought they were enemies and released a small fireball, which unexpectedly pierced through the ceiling. Now, he is the 7th prince of the kingdom of Salem, Lloyd. 10 years passed in a blink, and because he had many older brothers above him, he didn't have to worry about inheriting the throne. So Lloyd pushed aside all unrelated classes to spend all day studying in the magic library. However, severe academic imbalance was not tolerated for nobles. Every time he went to the library, he was anxious about being caught by the maids. Since his destination was always the same, he was often ambushed and caught by the swordsmanship instructor, Silpha. He would then be forcibly taken to the training ground because, as royalty, it was essential to be proficient in both physical and magical arts to maintain dignity. Given his poor performance, he had to use some tricks to get by. In a matter of seconds, they exchanged dozens of moves. At first, Silpha went easy on him, but when Lloyd used magic, it felt like she was fighting a mirror image of herself. Although his swordsmanship was on par, they were not in the same weight class, and he couldn't defeat her with just that. So, he used his tricks to make up for his shortcomings. After enhancing himself, they fought evenly, but it was still hard to determine a winner. To quickly return to studying magic, Lloyd suddenly changed his tactics during the duel, using a feint to expose her weakness, and then knocked her out with a slight force. Thinking he could finally end the training, he was outsmarted by Silpha, who saw through his magical cheating and quickly counterattacked, knocking Lloyd back. Silpha could see through even the slightest changes. Despite this, she highly praised his incredible talent, noting his ability to cast 2 spells simultaneously, and murmured to herself, "Silpha will never leave you." In the evening, Lloyd was forced to bathe with the Shotokan enthusiasts. It was then that he heard a rumor from them. Long ago, there was a demon named Grimoire who was powerful enough to destroy a country. He was later sealed in a book by a mage, and that forbidden book is now sealed beneath this castle. Upon hearing this, Lloyd trembled with excitement. So late at night, he used invisibility magic to bypass the guarding soldiers and reach the deepest part of the castle. Facing the strongest barrier set up by 10 mages, it shattered into pieces in less than 2.5 seconds. Entering the library, he then used his own barrier to reinforce and strengthen it, allowing him to browse the books without worry until he found the forbidden book containing the demon. However, soon the target walked right into the trap. Seeing that it was Lloyd who unsealed the door, the demon began to persuade him, claiming that the seal on the magic book would fail eventually anyway. It suggested that Lloyd might as well unseal it now and promised infinite gold in return. However, Lloyd wasn't a fool. He worried that if released, the demon might harm the country. In response, the demon assured him that its enemies were long dead and it wouldn't cause any more trouble. Additionally, it offered to teach him ancient magic that had been lost for ages. On further thought, the demon assumed that a child like Lloyd wouldn't be interested, but Lloyd was precisely aiming for that. Seeing his interest, the demon continued to deceive him, and eventually, Lloyd excitedly unsealed it. At that moment, the demon thought it was invincible, unaware that in the face of absolute power, it was always a clown. It sent a dark flash cannon towards Lloyd, but in the next second, all the damage was blocked by Lloyd's barrier. Lloyd commented that it was a strange and unique spell, asking the demon to release it once more. To the demon, this was a blatant provocation. Enraged, it launched a frenzied barrage of attacks. Meanwhile, Lloyd was only excited, never worrying that the barrier might break. He was even curious about the form of the magic attack. So, he deliberately opened a small gap and used his finger to experiment. The moment he touched it, he quickly retracted his finger. This move left the demon dumbfounded, but Lloyd was thrilled as if discovering a new continent, completely absorbed. Grimoire was shocked and furious. As it unleashed its ultimate move, Lloyd found it quite interesting. Although humans can't have two mouths, it didn't mean he would give up. Soon, the ultimate move ended, and the barrier remained intact. Lloyd looked at it expectantly, wanting to see more ancient magic. At this moment, the demon finally realized the seriousness of the situation and tried to escape without looking back. However, it couldn't outrun Lloyd's barrier, which enveloped the entire library. While the demon thought it was to prevent its escape, Lloyd explained that he couldn't control his power well, and if he destroyed the castle like he did when he was born, he would get scolded. Having endured 2 rounds of the demon's attacks, it was now Lloyd's turn. Under the intense light, a fierce flame attack erupted. The once intact library turned into ruins. Lloyd was confused why the demon didn't set up a barrier for defense and instead took the damage head-on. He even began to suspect it had a masochistic tendency. In the next moment, Lloyd effortlessly restored the entire library to its original state. This scene shocked the demon, who could only kneel and beg for mercy, swearing loyalty as Lloyd's subordinate. Hearing this, Lloyd immediately agreed and instructed the demon to take on a harmless appearance. However, the demon still had its own plans. It thought that as long as it stayed close to Lloyd, it could seize the opportunity to possess him. With Lloyd's power, it believed it could rule the world. But soon, it was astounded by the density of Lloyd's magic, unable to even insert a finger. Currently, being unable to fight back, it had no choice but to obediently act as a mascot. One day, the second prince, Albert, took him to the magic shooting range. With a casual flick, Albert launched a fireball that accurately hit the farthest target. The onlookers immediately began to praise him, as he was the most likely contender for the next king. When Lloyd's turn came, he knew he couldn't be too conspicuous, lest he steal the spotlight from his older brother. So, he decided to let his fireball just graze the edge of the target. However, he didn't realize that this was even more remarkable. In no time, every target was grazed. As for Albert, he remained silent throughout, and then declared that he needed to rest inside for a bit. Seeing the spectators leave, Lloyd no longer had to hide his strength and could do whatever he wanted. He prepared to try Grimoire's double chanting. Normally, a person can't have 2 mouths, but just as Grimoire was feeling puzzled, Lloyd took off his glove and absorbed it into his body. Normally, people wouldn't dare to do such a thing, as they would typically be possessed by the demon. However, Lloyd's high-density magic power made him unafraid. Now, the two shared one body. Just as Grimoire was about to cooperate with him in chanting the high-level spell Inferno Fireball, Lloyd moved his mouth slightly, startling Grimoire. After Lloyd's explanation, it became clear that he had compressed the repeated incantations. Though it was just one short word, it contained an enormous amount of information, almost causing Grimoire's mind to break, let alone cooperate in chanting. Seeing time running out, Lloyd had a sudden inspiration and directly took over Grimoire's mouth, allowing him to multitask and chant 2 spells simultaneously. What shocked Grimoire even more was that Lloyd managed to fuse high-level water and fire spells, combined with an enormous amount of magic power, capable of causing catastrophic damage. In that instant, Grimoire realized that if this spell hit the surface, the country would surely disappear from the map. Meanwhile, ministers couldn't understand why Albert valued Lloyd so much. Hearing this, Albert thought they were fools. The feat of grazing all 9 targets without missing one was impossible to attribute to coincidence. Thus, he believed that Lloyd was destined to become a great sage in the future, and maintaining a good relationship with him would be his strongest card in the competition for the throne. At this moment, the ministers sensed something was wrong. Why had the sky darkened? The truth was that the atmosphere had been pierced by Lloyd's magic, covering an area large enough to envelop the entire castle. Grimoire once again fell into fear, grateful that it had surrendered quickly. Not long after, Lloyd had absorbed all the knowledge of the library into his mind. With nothing else to do, he set his sights on magical equipment, and exploring dungeons was his best option. Not only could he encounter more unseen monsters, but he could also experience the thrill of treasure hunting. Seeing this, Grimoire firmly opposed it, as letting this human-shaped nuclear weapon run around was extremely dangerous. However, Lloyd didn't know what it was thinking and pulled out an acorn, using wood magic to create a perfect replica. This way, he could sneak out without being noticed, as long as he didn't run into Silpha, who could notice even a 0.7 millimeter growth in Lloyd's height. Next, he stuffed Grimoire's soul into the replica, allowing for remote control and information transfer. Grimoire couldn't help but marvel at the precision of the replica's craftsmanship, even including a magic circulation system. Realizing what this meant, it excitedly shouted, seizing the opportunity to do whatever it wanted while Lloyd was away. At this moment, Lloyd sighed, feeling that taking Grim as a familiar was indeed the right choice. This made Grim blush with emotion. Only after flying 2.5 kilometers away did Lloyd realize he'd forgotten to check the location of the dungeon. Below, there was some commotion. Upon closer inspection, he saw a few beastmen chasing a girl with twin tails. She seemed to be in danger, but in reality, she was luring the enemies deeper, leading them to a suitable position for a sudden counterattack. This must be what they call a martial artist. Seeing a martial artist for the first time, Lloyd was quite excited. According to the books, there was an energy called chi in foreign lands, circulating within the body through breathing and unleashing incredible power. In short, Lloyd was now very interested in chi. The twin-tailed girl sensed Lloyd's presence and asked who was hiding there. Feeling there was no need to hide anymore, Lloyd stepped out. But Grim reminded him that revealing himself like this could easily expose his identity. Meanwhile, the impatient twin tails approached him proactively. At the critical moment, Lloyd quickly completed his disguise. Now, his identity was that of a new adventurer named Robert. Using double chanting, he fused his appearance with that of his older brother, creating a unique Robert. The girl, named Tao, was a superficial romantic. She became an adventurer to meet her destined partner, but unfortunately, the men she met all preferred delicate girls. Now she firmly believed that meeting Lloyd was fate. Lloyd, sensing she wasn't quite normal, prepared to leave and solo the dungeon. However, the twin tails clung to Lloyd and quickly brought him to a nearby B-rank dungeon. With just a slight effort, she could instantly kill any enemy, thinking that Robert would be deeply impressed by her power. However, he wasn't even looking. Later, under Lloyd's persistent questioning, she explained that chi was similar to the magic power used by mages, with the key to chi practice being the breathing technique. It required extensive training to feel the chi within. As the twin tails continued to promote herself, Lloyd had already started practicing according to her instructions. Within a few breaths, his lungs were almost bursting from the massive chi intake. Seeing this, Tao hurriedly tried to stop him, never imagining that Lloyd had already grasped half of it and was even fantasizing about combining chi with magic power. Seeing Lloyd's serious and absorbed expression, the twin tails also felt gratified and decided to teach him more about chi. The scene shifted to Grim leisurely sipping afternoon tea in the castle, only to be startled by the yandere lowly lover Silpha appearing from behind. Seeing her smile, Grim felt his fate was uncertain. Back at the main scene, the twin tails demonstrated one of her few long-range attack techniques. With the boss defeated by a chi bullet, the treasure chest that appeared ahead was their reward for clearing the dungeon. However, considering how little the dungeon had developed, it was clear that the prize wouldn't be great. Unexpectedly, the ground cracked open in the next moment, revealing a skeleton. Lloyd remained unfazed. The girl never imagined encountering a lich in an ordinary dungeon, a monster even A-rank adventurers couldn't handle. She could have taken the opportunity to escape, but the opponent not only mocked the chi techniques she had dedicated her life to studying, but also declared that a girl's rural martial arts weren't even worthy of being devoured by him. Such disdainful arrogance made the girl decide to go all out. She resolved to teach the lich a lesson with her martial arts. No matter if it rained or snowed, Tao had never even held a man's hand, foolishly dedicating herself to hard training, so she wouldn't allow anyone to look down on her anymore. Tao's full-powered close-range killing move directly shattered the opponent's barrier. However, she exhausted herself so much that she couldn't even maintain her breathing. But she never expected to hear the lich's voice again from behind. To the lich, the chi techniques she had devoted her life to were not even as powerful as the magic he could release with a single finger. At this moment, Tao's body was completely immobilized, and all she could do was await death. At the critical moment, Lloyd appeared, using a barrier to block the attack. Moments earlier, he had thought Tao had knocked him away to solo the boss. Seeing her in danger now, he decided to step in. He also had something he wanted to try out. In an instant, Lloyd's gaze grew intense. He appeared directly behind the Lich, using the chi techniques he had just learned to accelerate his chanting speed. Even the Lich couldn't see his movements clearly. Unfortunately, Lloyd couldn't yet use chi techniques proficiently in combat, so he generated a barrier to resist attacks while further contemplating the fusion of chi and magic power. He took a deep breath, deeper than usual. In the next moment, Lloyd began moving with the barrier. However, to the Lich, it seemed as if Lloyd was choosing to flee, prompting the Lich to increase his attack frequency. The next second, Lloyd's barrier shattered. The Lich thought his attack had worked, unaware that Lloyd had voluntarily dissolved his defensive barrier to inhale more chi. Gradually, Lloyd began to interweave chi and magic power. While dodging attacks, he continuously increased the fusion's degree. When there was nowhere left to dodge, Lloyd launched his first counterattack. He shattered all incoming attacks, but wasn't satisfied with the result. He wanted to make the ring thinner. This time, his attack formed an arc and reached further. At this point, Lloyd had fully entered a state of magical mania. His terrifying laughter made the Lich feel oppressed. Overwhelming attacks bombarded the Lich, and ultimately, Lloyd's self-developed attack instantly killed him. After the battle, the two found a worn-out knife in the treasure chest. Tao thought it was just a useless weapon, but Lloyd noticed that some kind of magic was imbued in the knife. Before he could examine it closely, the chest suddenly sank into the ground. It turned out that after retrieving the treasure, the chest would disappear along with the dungeon. Seeing this, Lloyd had a wild idea. Could the chest be alive? The chest hands over the treasure, and then seizes the chance to escape. Lloyd believed that the treasure chest was the core of the dungeon. Lloyd persistently clung to the treasure chest, successfully taking this core with him. After bidding farewell, he flew towards the royal city. It was only then that Tao realized she hadn't exchanged contact information with him. Oh no. I let a good man get away. 2.5 hours later, Lloyd returned to the royal city. The first thing he saw was his substitute, which had been played with and damaged. It turned out that even Silpha hadn't realized it was a substitute and had taken the demon to practice swordsmanship. However, the demon had become much weaker and couldn't defend itself at all, ending up crying from the beating. After comforting Grim, Lloyd began to study the worn-out knife he had just obtained. He first soaked it in hot water and then gently scraped the blade with a tool. Gradually, he successfully removed the magical enchantment from the blade. This small piece of rune work was a magical substance called magic marrow liquid. This liquid could be used to inscribe runes on weapons for enhancement. Lloyd's task was to study the enchantment magic. However, the amount of magic marrow liquid obtained from the knife was too small. If he failed, both the precious liquid and the weapon would be wasted. Therefore, Lloyd decided to first analyze the magic marrow liquid and then mass produce it on his own. Using analytical magic, he successfully decomposed the magic marrow liquid into its original main ingredients. Now, he needed to acquire these 3 primary ingredients and a large number of weapons. The most precious of these, red magic powder, Lloyd obtained by decomposing the dungeon core. He then found his father and asked him for a large bag of silver coins. Surprisingly, this made the king think that his 7th son was very frugal, as he didn't even ask for gold coins for pocket money. After refining the silver coins, Lloyd found Silpha. This time, he engaged in a big battle with her. The technique of using chi to increase chanting speed surprised Silpha, but in the end, her rich experience as a swordmaster led to Lloyd's defeat. Even though he lost the battle, Silpha still gave Lloyd the oil that was part of their wager. With the last ingredient in hand, Lloyd synthesized the magic marrow liquid. Next, he found his brother and requested a large number of weapons. Of course, his brother would do his best to fulfill his cute little brother's request. However, this troubled a few soldiers nearby, as in their eyes, the 7th prince was just a child, and they feared that the enchantment magic would fail, wasting their weapons. After bringing the weapons to his room, Lloyd began to frantically enhance them. He was in charge of writing the runes, while the substitute handled miscellaneous tasks, with Grim cheering Lloyd on. Even with Lloyd's exceptional talent, enchantment magic was extremely difficult. any slight mistake could completely ruin the weapon. As the materials were continuously consumed, they finally created their first enchanted weapon. 2.5 days passed this way, and Lloyd successfully enchanted 50 out of 120 weapons. Initially, he had succeeded with 80, but later attempts to add more runes resulted in some failures. This astonished his brother, who couldn't believe it. After all, even top-tier enchanters only had a success rate of 10%. At this moment, his brother realized that although he had always known his younger brother was exceptional, Lloyd's magical talents far exceeded his imagination. Meanwhile, a nearby soldier couldn't believe it either and thought they were just unfinished ordinary weapons. However, he was taken aback when, after sheathing his sword, the scabbard at his waist was cut clean in half. Subsequently, his brother took the enchanted weapons to hunt magical beasts. Silpha, Lloyd's maid and teacher, insisted on accompanying Lloyd when she learned he was heading to the perilous monster forest. Their mission was to subdue the beasts attacking the villages in the forest, providing an opportunity to test the power of Lloyd's enchanted weapons. Unexpectedly, before encountering any magical beasts, they were attacked by monsters. Lloyd, of course, had to conceal his strength and thus acted harmless. Unbeknownst to them, he had already sensed the approaching monsters using the chi techniques taught by Tao. Though this was just a basic chi technique, it proved unexpectedly useful in reality. At the same time, the soldiers began to engage the monsters. The swords they wielded were the iron swords enchanted by Lloyd. No one had expected that with just a light slash, the monsters' bodies would be cut like paper. Some soldiers were even afraid to use their swords because they were too sharp. In an instant, all the monsters were eliminated. Surprisingly, despite using an ordinary sword, Silpha killed more monsters than anyone else. At that moment, a surviving monster suddenly revived. However, before Lloyd could act, an unexpected person saved the day. It was Tao, whom Lloyd had encountered before. She had sensed someone nearby using chi techniques and thought it was the handsome man Lloyd had previously disguised as, so she came over. Immediately, she recognized that Lloyd was using chi breathing techniques. Although he wasn't the handsome guy she was looking for, his breathing habits were identical. Before she could say more, Silpha cut down another attacking monster with a single stroke. But that wasn't the main issue. Seeing a strange woman standing so close to Lloyd, Silpha couldn't just stand by and watch. Instantly, the atmosphere between the two women became tense. Fortunately, Lloyd's brother arrived in time to mediate, and even invited Tao to join them on their mission. That evening, Tao learned of their prince's identity. However, she was more concerned that although Lloyd's brother resembled Robert in physique and appearance, she didn't sense the same aura from him. Instead, Lloyd's aura was identical to the one she was looking for, leaving her quite puzzled. Lloyd didn't expect that his detection breathing would attract Tao. However, there was nothing he could do now but try to avoid Tao as much as possible. He also learned why she was there. Tao had accepted a commission from the villagers to repair the temple on the mountain. At this moment, a wolf-shaped magical beast appeared from the shadows. This was the target of Lloyd's mission, the bear wolf. Given the current situation, Lloyd decided not to take action and stayed behind Silpha to observe the battle. Only Grim noticed something unusual about the distant temple. On the other side, the soldiers were encircling the bear wolf. Despite its enormous size, it was exceptionally fast, making it difficult for the soldiers to handle. Fortunately, Tao intervened, taking down the bear wolf with a single chi blast. At this point, Lloyd's brother also decided to join the fight. He drew the magical sword enchanted by Lloyd. The sword glowed as he chanted an incantation, and a massive fireball exploded in front of them, incinerating the bear wolf to charcoal. Even he was surprised by the sword's overwhelming power, all thanks to Lloyd's enchantment. Everyone thought the trouble was over, but suddenly, purple magic energy appeared above the charred remains of the bear wolf. In the next second, the supposedly dead bear wolf stood up again, accompanied by several others of its kind. The most bizarre part was a hand slowly emerging from the bear wolf's mouth, followed by a being calling itself the demon Pazuzu. In the next instant, all the bear wolves launched an attack simultaneously. Despite the group's superior strength, the wounds they inflicted on the bear wolves regenerated instantly, plunging everyone into a tough battle. Lloyd, however, remained unconcerned and curiously asked Grim about their opponent. Grim explained that Pazuzu was a demon sealed in the temple, capable of altering the nature of magic at will. He used this ability to create magical threads, controlling the beowulfs like puppets and continuously supplying them with magic to enhance their regenerative abilities. Grimm stated that without defeating Pazuzu himself, the battle would be unwinnable. But Lloyd wasn't worried about the group. Instead, he began asking Grimm about changing the nature of magic. Grimm was incredulous. How could Lloyd be interested in learning such things when everyone was fighting hard? What Grimm didn't know was that Lloyd wasn't panicking because there was someone present who was even stronger than him. On the other side, Pazuzu observed the situation. Though he acknowledged a few skilled individuals among the opponents, he dismissed the soldiers as mere weapon-reliant grunts and mocked Lloyd as a scared little kid with his nanny. Little did he know that he had hit the biggest nerve by looking down on the two strongest people present. Furthermore, he had now angered the yandere maid. Silpha's gaze changed, her terrifying killing intent making even Tao shudder. The entire battlefield became her domain at that moment. At this moment, the demon had no idea what kind of monster he was facing in the form of this woman. He merely thought she was incredibly foolish. With magic that regenerates wounds, how can you defeat me? He sneered. Besides, our endless magic is our specialty. Silpha had no interest in listening to him. She activated her taunts, prompting the demon to launch a frenzied attack. However, none of his strikes could harm Silpha in the slightest. Finally, the demon realized that Silpha was a troublesome opponent. He decided to concentrate most of his magic on himself, which caused the other beowulfs to regenerate more slowly. Meanwhile, Grimm was teaching Lloyd how to change the nature of magic. This delicate technique usually takes a long time to master, but Lloyd managed to learn it in just 2.5 minutes. Pazuzu couldn't believe that such a powerful swordsman was merely a nanny for a child. Seizing a moment when Silpha was distracted, Pazuzu tried his luck again. Earlier, he had merely mocked Lloyd. Now he went further, continuously bad-mouthing Lloyd in an attempt to distract Silpha. Just as he thought his attack had succeeded, Silpha appeared right in front of him, her anger ignited. Under the moonlight, a single double-edged strike left Pazuzu struggling to defend himself. Amidst the flashes of swords and blades, he fell to his knees, leaving everyone stunned by Silpha's severity. The demon was being overpowered by Sword Saint Silpha, but he had a trick up his sleeve. Throughout the battle, he had been releasing his miasma. When it activated, everyone present fainted, except for Tao, who barely managed to stay conscious using her breathing techniques. The demon then revealed a new form, immediately sending Silpha flying with a powerful strike. He charged forward, aiming for a final blow, but Tao intervened just in time to block the attack. Silpha was now completely incapacitated. Tao believed she was the only one left capable of fighting the demon. However, the opponent instantly appeared behind her. Tao reacted quickly, launching a counterattack, but the demon dodged it effortlessly and captured her with a single strike. Worse still, Tao's breathing had been disrupted, and the miasma began to invade her body. She had no choice but to use all her remaining strength to unleash her final move. Before she could catch her breath, a beowulf bit her from behind, and Pazuzu remained unscathed. Eventually, Tao exhausted her strength and was swallowed whole. Just as the demon was reveling in his triumph, Lloyd's voice rang out from behind. The demon suddenly realized that Lloyd was not poisoned. What surprised him even more was the cute creature beside Lloyd. A closer look revealed it was a demon like himself. Pazuzu began to mock Grimm's appearance, which made Grimm's veins bulge with anger. However, knowing that Lloyd was about to beat Pazuzu senseless, Grimm did not retort. He simply told Pazuzu to be ready to cry for his mother. Lloyd then made his move. The magic in his hand continuously changed forms. Despite claiming he wasn't good at controlling magic, the magic in his hand transformed into various flower shapes. The warm magic created a sea of flowers, causing all of Pazuzu's minions to betray him. At this moment, Lloyd had seized control of all the beowulfs. The first thing he did after taking control was to command the beowulfs to spit Tao out. On the other side, the demon perceived that Lloyd would not be easy to deal with, and immediately released more miasma, intending to use it to wrest control from Lloyd. However, the beowulfs suddenly remembered the memories of their parents being killed by Pazuzu. In a frenzy, all the beowulfs launched an attack on him. This infuriated Pazuzu completely. To him, the beowulfs were creatures he had personally raised, and now they dared to turn on their master. Pazuzu swiftly knocked all the beowulfs to the ground. In the next second, his body began to surge with magic. He then challenged Lloyd, declaring that no matter how strong Lloyd's magic was, it would be useless. "Magic cannot kill me because demons are beings formed from magic," he said. As he spoke, his magic withered the surrounding flower fields. However, the demon had no idea that he had provoked a magic fanatic with extraordinary power. At that moment, Lloyd was entirely focused on figuring out how to use magic to kill him. In an instant, Pazuzu was terrified by the dark magic emanating from Lloyd. Overwhelmed with excitement, Lloyd's abnormal magic power made Pazuzu tremble. By the time Pazuzu thought of fleeing, it was already too late. Lloyd, finding it not amusing enough, absorbed Grim into himself and began dual chanting. Instantly, more barriers appeared to chase Pazuzu. Even when he tried to escape into the ocean, the barriers relentlessly pursued him. Pazuzu exclaimed, half praising himself for his quick thinking, yet ultimately found himself trapped within the barriers. Finally panicking, he continuously rammed into the barriers, but to no avail. What awaited him was Lloyd's terrifying magical experiment. 4 types of magical formations activated simultaneously, continuously harming Pazuzu. When the light from the magic faded, Lloyd showed a disappointed expression. "You said magic couldn't kill you? It hasn't even been 5 minutes, and look at what happened," he remarked. At that moment, Lloyd's brother regained consciousness. To hide his true strength, he hastily attributed all the credit to his former persona, Robert. In his final moments, Pazuzu transferred all his remaining magic to Grim, entrusting his ambitions to him. Upon returning to the capital, Lloyd and his brother reported the demon incident to the king. To Lloyd's surprise, his brother mentioned Lloyd's enchanting talent and even suggested to the king that Lloyd be given the right of succession. After some consideration, the king decided to give his youngest son a chance. However, Lloyd declined the succession rights, as his mind was entirely occupied with magic-related pursuits. The bear wolf that clung to him had followed them back to the city voluntarily. Lloyd named it Shiro, and its fluffy appearance was incredibly adorable. Even Grim felt jealous and transformed himself into a fluffy form to compete for affection. At this point, Silpha also arrived, her injuries not being severe. Meanwhile, Tao continued her search for Robert,